All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, December 4th, right here on All In Horns, your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson, along with Jake Jimerson. And in today's episode, before we get too deep into the SEC championship game, as we have officially closed the chapter on Texas A&M, not that we won't always throw in a couple jabs here and there as the year goes on until next November. And Jake, we'll talk about the SEC championship game slightly, but we also want to do a season recap and the best moments of this season and kind of closing the chapter on this year as this college football season is coming to a close. Unbelievably, I can't believe I'm already saying that. But on certain players' careers here at Texas, as they move on either to graduation or they move on in the draft or whatever the case may be, we are also on immediate recruiting watch. This is early signing week, and so flips can happen at a moment's notice. We will try to give that to you if something happens to break while we are recording these episodes, which come out Tuesday through Friday at noon, and then we give you our immediate reaction on Saturday following the football games. But like, share, subscribe, do all the things. We are where all podcasts can be heard, whether that is on YouTube watching with us or if you are listening to us on the podcast. Jake, how's it going, man? And as we get ready, how are you're starting to get your nerves kind of settled in for a rematch against Georgia? Are you starting to kind of just, like, hey, you know what? We're in the playoffs no matter what. Is it really that big of a deal? I mean, it's obviously a big deal. I'm underplaying that, but what's your feeling as it is a Wednesday midweek as we prepare for the SEC championship game?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's the latter where it's like, it's not that big of a deal. It is different, right? It's different than even the Big 12 title game last year because you knew they had to win that to get into the playoff.
Right.
That's just not the case this year. They're in the playoff. It's whether they get the bye. That's a big deal. This means a lot. Do not get me wrong. But it does make the stakes, that the potential high of a win is higher than last year because you'd be winning the SEC in the first year, beating Georgia, avenging that loss, beating a team that's won 2 out of the last 3 national titles, has been one of the best teams this year, played the toughest schedule in all of college football, and is also going to be guaranteed in the playoffs regardless of this result. So the potential high is really high. It's just the potential low, in my opinion, is not as low as it normally would be. Just knowing that they're in that tournament no matter what, and that's what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it definitely does make the stakes for it feel, in my opinion, a little bit different. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel that way for the SEC and for the Big Ten. Either one is, both teams are in. So we know 4 teams are automatically in. In fact, we know Ohio State's also automatically in. We know Indiana's probably an automatic in. We know Georgia is also probably, they say that they're not going to punish conference championship losers. And so we're looking at a Notre Dame who's also in. And so we're looking at a very few select amount of teams that are actually playing for their playoff lives during conference championship week. The Big 12 is going to be an exciting, very fun game. A lot at stake. We're going to see a Mountain West game that is going to be very exciting. A lot at stake in terms of who gets into the college football playoffs. And so, yeah, I think college football, I think championship week is going to have a slightly different feel than it has in years past. I don't think it may necessarily be that way every year. I think it just kind of happened where how it happened this year, it happens to be that way. I'll be curious though if Jake, they want to revisit this automatic bid situation in the college football playoffs, because it is a much less stress in terms of it is not the end of the world if you lose this game for half of the college football playoff field.
I don't think there's a way to change that. The top 2 teams in the SEC are always going to be automatically in. I mean, at the end of in a 12-team plus playoff system, I don't see a world. I mean, I guess there is a world, right? Because A&M would have had to beat Texas and won the SEC title game to get in. They weren't getting in if they just beat Texas. So I guess there is a world, but
then you still have maybe 3, 4, 5 getting in and not the number, which is very odd.
And that would have been really odd. So if anything, conference scheduling needs to be adjusted. I do think what we've talked about with changing, maybe not necessarily. I think the automatic bid, if you win your conference championship, is actually fine. I think there just shouldn't be the guarantee of the top 4 of the conference titles getting a bye.
Right.
I think you should seed based off how good those teams are.
If
I don't have an
SEC
issue with the automatic bid because it makes the Big 12 title mean something.
Right. Well, and I think too, I do think, say, in a world where the SEC champion is the 7th best team in the country, they should be seeded as the number 7 team in the college football playoffs. They should not automatically get a top 4 seed. I think that's what you're saying there is like, maybe the top 4 teams are all Big 10 teams. I doubt that would ever happen, but hypothetically, let's just put that scenario out there. Those 4 teams should get a first round bye regardless of, if they are ranked the top 4 teams at the end of the season. Those 4 teams get, despite conference champions, they should get those seeds.
Plain and simple, a Boise State should not be potentially getting a bye.
Yeah.
They just shouldn't.
Right.
A home game, yeah, potentially, but a bye where if you're a 5 seed, you're going, oh, we just got to beat this 12 seed. Like if you're, I was going to say Ohio, let's use Ohio State or if you're Texas, the idea of, let's say they lost and they got the 5 seed and it's like, oh, you got to beat Iowa State or Arizona State at home. And then you got to turn around and beat Boise State
on a neutral site.
And then you're in the semifinals. Yeah, I'll take that route.
Yeah, I'll take that
route probably over being like a 3 seed where you might have to play like a Tennessee round 2.
The winner of Georgia, Tennessee.
I don't want round 3 with Georgia, second round of the playoffs. And I'm worried about that happening. We'll get into that later in the week, but there's a lot of playoff scenarios where I'm like, this seeding's going to matter, but it might not actually be like Texas needs to be the 2 seed. It might be like, man, would it be better if they were a 5 seed? And that just shouldn't be the case. So that's my main complaint with this system. I actually like the automatic bid just because I think you should, if you're a conference champion in those power conferences, and then letting one team who's not in the power conference in. But the bye and the way that the buys are given is what I have an issue with because it just makes where there's a huge seeding imbalance.
No, yes. I completely agree with that. Now, there's also a scenario where a lot of people have just penciled in that 5th team, that G5 team, possibly, just being the 12th seed. You're the last seed that gets in, whether you're the Big 12 champion. That's not necessarily the case. The Big 12 champion could be the 10 seed. The Big 12 champion or the G5 team, it's the top 4 conference winners that get the top 4 seeds. And then the highest seeded 5th conference gets the, you could be the 5th best team and you could have a home field advantage. It didn't play out that way this year, but say Arizona State wins it, which I believe in the AP polls, again, the AP poll doesn't really matter in terms of it, but I believe they're at number 12. If they win and they beat Iowa State in a Big 12 championship game, you better believe that they're jumping up a couple of spots. They're going to jump up 2 or 3 spots. And so you might be looking at a Big 12 champion who is a 9 seed or an 8 seed. So we just don't know where those are going to fall quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, they sure as hell better jump Alabama, who is just getting in based off of their name.
Is that a conversation we wait for another day, or do we go ahead?
I think we have that on Thursday. This show, we have too much to jump into already.
Right. Yeah,
I'll earmark it for us because I think we're going to get into a pretty deep playoff talk on Thursday's show as a spoiler for everyone, or a teaser, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I think Alabama, I want to have a discussion. I want to have a discourse about
I don't
them.
think
And I want to have a discourse about a tweet from Lane Kiffin today that I actually think has some merit. And so just a little bit of a teaser. I do want to really dive into that on tomorrow's show.
Today's episode is meant for our season recap of the Texas Longhorns 2024 team and some players that will likely not be returning, some players that are definitely not returning because they're seniors or moving on to the NFL draft. And so, Jake, let's go through a season recap. To you, what were some of the biggest moments that we saw from this team? Whether that was a week one shutout, whether that was going up to Michigan, whether that was Arch Manning coming in and having to win us some games, whether that was Cotton Bowl, OU, Texas A&M, Texas. Just what are some things that stood out to you this year, Jake?
I'm going to go a little outside the box for my favorite moment of the season, actually. Maybe some of you know where this is going. I know you might, Tanner. 15 plays, 86 yards, 8 minutes and 22 seconds, a touchdown, and all 15 plays were runs. I thought that was the ultimate culture drive where the offense had been sputtering against Kentucky. Things were kind of getting fluky. They were kind of letting Kentucky, who had no business being in the game, back in the game. And they said, not so fast, my friend.
Yeah.
In the words of Lee Corso.
Military Academy would be proud of. Just 15, just run it down your throat, 3, 4, 5 yards at a time, taking down half the quarter and ending it in a touchdown drive. It was a culture drive, and now, not really since that game. We saw it in the Arkansas game, but we never saw a full drive of just runs. And we've seen those. We saw it at Texas A&M twice. We saw 2 of those drives where it was 10-plus drives, taking up a lot of time in the quarter, going over 60 yards in each one of those drives that should have ended in points. They ended in turnovers. But, we're starting to see that identity in Texas to where that is an expectation in the second half of games when you're up by 2 scores, is to have one long drive, maybe even 2 long drives that you just dominate time of possession. You can't get off the field.
Yeah, I mean, against Michigan, I thought we went, whoa, this offensive line's what we expected. Then there were some moments of not necessarily doubt, but of, are they really the best offensive line in the country, or
Georgia and Vanderbilt stick out the most?
Yeah, Georgia and Vanderbilt stick out the most, but there was even moments, against Mississippi State where the run game, people forget the run game was not good early in the season.
That had a little bit to do with the running back situation.
Yes, there were injuries. You couldn't commit to the run. And we talked about that they were going to commit to the run more as the season went along. We're a couple idiots, but sometimes 10% of the time we know what we're talking about.
You know what we should have done? We should have gone back and watched all of our episodes, every single one of them, and said which ones we were right on, and not the ones that we were wrong on. We don't talk about the ones we were wrong on.
No. We're going to talk about the 10% more than the 90.
1,000%. It wouldn't take us that long to go through.
I know we consistently were saying, people are getting mad about not committing to the run earlier season. We're like, look, Sark views this as a potential 16-week plus season, or even more than that if you want to go to a national title. And they have banged up running backs. They have hardly any running backs left. They're not going to commit to the run right now. You just can't. And they were still kind of figuring out what their identity was running the football. And then as the season gone along, slowly committed to it more. And then we have just seen it explode over these last few weeks. The OU game was a little bit of a teaser. But I think that drive encapsulates that this offensive line has become everything we dreamed it would be. And I really hope that this Georgia game just puts a period to that statement of going, we're righting that wrong that happened earlier in the season that motivated us and refocused us to become the dominant group that we all knew they could be.
1 or 2 plays that kind of stick out to me, Jake, and these are individual plays. The Silas Bolden play in the OU game. That is a Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy, TCU type game or type play that is culture. And it's funny that it happens in back-to-back years and happens in a moment in the game that is huge in terms of Texas kind of turning the tide and turning the momentum of those games. into their favor. And so Silas Bolden recovering that fumble in the end zone after Trey Wisner fumbled at like the 2-yard line was it just kind of encapsulated this season, last season, and really the Sark era of, yeah, things might be going smooth, but even if there's a hiccup, even if there's a bump in the road, if you never give up and you keep going and you keep your pursuit in this play, in this game, in this series, in this season, good things are going to happen. You're going to get the results that you want. And that was one thing. And then another play, for whatever reason, this one play has stood out to me. And I don't know if it's just like I had a photographic memory of this play, but it was on the opening drive of the Texas-Michigan game. I believe it was 3rd down. And Quinn threw a beautiful seam route right to Isaiah Bond. And it was a diving catch in between 2 defenders for maybe about a 30, 40-yard gain. And it was on the opening drive. And I just was like, for whatever reason, it was a moment and a play that lifted any kind of doubt that I had. Not that I had any going into the season, but like anything of like, what if this Michigan game is just, what if we just don't, all that just kind of went away. I was like, oh, this team's ready. This team's ready not only for this game, this team's ready for this season. This team is something special. And I don't know why that one play sticks out to me more than other plays in the season, but that throw to Bond in week 2 against Michigan was really kind of like, oh, this is full potential Quinn Ewers, Isaiah Bond. And if the defense and offensive line play like this consistently, we have something special going on here in Austin.
Yeah, that's actually a really good play that I'd kind of forgotten about. And it just shows you how it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Because that is one where like it settled the nerves in that game. And that was the first big matchup. I know Michigan didn't turn out as good as we thought they'd be. Well, they still beat Ohio State. So they weren't just awful.
Right.
They maybe weren't as bad as everyone thought they were going to be.
They had the talent to be good.
They've been a good home team. I think they won most of their home games this year, other than Texas, obviously. But just to add on to that Silas Bolden play, last year's Jordan Whittington. Jordan Whittington was a Longhorn from the beginning. And so he had really helped that culture change. Bolden's a transfer who's probably not been as big of a role as he thought he was going to be after camp. And yet he still made that play. And I think that says a lot about culture. When you have a guy who's coming in who's not only a transfer, but really isn't seeing the field that much, hasn't made really any huge plays, was a guy that got hyped up a lot out of camp. And yet he was still that bought in that, 20 yards behind the ball with Stuntsman like 2 yards away from it, but afraid to dive for it, and just out hustles him. Just wants it more than the Sooners did. And being a guy that was new to the program and wasn't seeing the field much, I just think the Whittington play is one thing, but for me, for Bolden to do that, not necessarily more than Whittington, but it just shows how much this culture really is the case of. You have Makuba, Bond. You have all these guys coming in. They're buying in right away. They know what they're getting into when they come to Texas. Yeah, Leona Lafau as well. Just staying the course and having a breakout season. It just shows how special this culture is, and I think a lot of people realize it after the CJ Baxter post. But you can see it in plays in the season as well.
Yeah, Jake. Another game I want to talk about is we get to see Arch Manning play. I mean, anytime we get to see Arch Manning play, it's a lot of fun. I was explaining it to my girlfriend, who is, she doesn't care about football. I'm just going to go out and say it, and that's why we work so well. She lets me have, my Saturdays, and she's like, you know what? I'll just go in the other room. You can just have your Saturday and just, rot on the couch. And that's exactly what I do. And so I was trying to explain to her when Arch came in the Texas A&M game and ran the 4th and 2, touchdown run on a QB sneak. I said, I was like, this guy is like the prince of football. I mean, he is a protege from generations of football. Started with his grandfather in the 70s, and he kind of made a name for the Mannings. And then they came out, Peyton and Eli, his kids, in college, and they were huge, names coming into college and then going into the NFL, then lived up to set expectations in the NFL, won a pair of Super Bowls for each of them. And now their nephew plays for my favorite team. So it's just like, it's super cool. And then he is now what seems to be living up to all of the hype that we saw. And it really started with that UTSA run where he comes into the game, gets a 60-yard touchdown run, and then boom, the very next drive, he gets a touchdown pass to DeAndre Moore. And it's just like, oh, the Arch Manning era has begun in Texas. And it's just really fun to see that happen this season.
Yeah, the Mississippi State game as well. And then obviously the A&M run, but also he's got swagger to him.
Dude's
I mean,
bad, man. He's dangerous.
He's got the scowl in the A&M game. I mean, he's going to be Quinn Ewers is going to be missed, and there's going to be learning bumps for Arch Manning, I'm sure, next year, where all of a sudden this whole fan base that wants him so bad is trying to throw him out the door for whoever
Trey
is
Owens. We want Trey Owens.
It'll be the Trey Owens fan club all of a sudden, but I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a special player for this Longhorn team. And I think he'll stay at least 2 years. I've seen some people going, what if he's one and done? I just don't think the Mannings operate that way.
What if he is?
So that means he had a really good season too. If he's able to be one and done, that means he had a pretty.
And he's
special
probably
season.
a freaking Heisman, and he's probably really freaking good, and he has led us into the playoffs again.
And
so
that's not going to happen. The Mannings none of the Mannings have operated that way. I think they've already pretty much said like he's going to play at least 2 seasons. So, but yeah, just getting that little sneak peek is like a little tease for it. And I've enjoyed Ewers. We've criticized here and there, but overall his career has been excellent. But it is exciting to see a guy who's the #1 recruit in the country and is a freaking Manning at the end of the day.
I know.
That's going to play for the Texas Longhorns of all teams.
It's really cool. Jake, let's go ahead and talk about that quarterback who is currently at Texas and the starter, Quinn Ewers, and kind of what his career will be remembered as a Texas Longhorn quarterback in his 3 years starting. Quinn Ewers will finish his game never losing to an unranked team. He's 24-7 against overall. And so those 7 losses have come to all ranked teams. And I think the lowest ranked team of all of them was number 15, Oklahoma State, or 12, something along those lines.
Yeah, that it might have been 19 or so.
The majority of them were top 10 teams.
How many unranked teams did Texas lose to in the years after Colt McCoy and leading into Quinn Ewers? Even a Sam Ehlinger lost to unranked teams. I mean, that's pretty special. To just never. We haven't. I mean, I guess Arkansas. Well, actually, no, that wasn't Quinn Ewers. So,
no, that's Casey Thompson.
We haven't seen a field storming against Quinn Ewers, and we never will, because now it's an SEC title game and then the playoffs. So that stat will reign true regardless of how the season ends. And then 24-7 overall, but I think it's what is it, like 21-3 in the last 2 years? It's around that. Most of those losses are in that first year. He missed some games, so I can't just look at the seasons and calculate it. But that he brought back the winning culture to Texas. He was the quarterback who reined it in. And yes, he's flawed. He's not perfect. He has moments of frustrating moments for fans, for sure. But at the end of the day, he needs to be remembered as a winner. Because guess what? 2-1 against Oklahoma. 1-0 against Little Brother, clinching an SEC title game, went to a Big 12 title game last year and won it, and playoffs 2 years in a row. He needs his flowers as his career starts to get wrapped up at Texas, in my opinion. I'm kind of done with the criticism at this point. He is what he is. We're going to see how the season ends. But no matter how the season ends, he ends a winner at Texas.
The guy's lost 3 games in 2 seasons. And he's going to lead Texas to back-to-back playoff appearances. One playoff appearance was with the 4-team playoff, and could possibly lead Texas to back-to-back conference championships in 2 separate conferences. At the end of the day, that's all you really need to know, and that's all I need to know about the guy. I mean, that just is what it is. It just is what it is. He, like you said, he's a winner. Now, is he perfect? No, he's not. But what quarterback is, what college quarterback is. There were teams and fans really across the country that were saying, "Oh, Stetson Bennett's a system guy. He's not that good." And yeah, maybe so, but the dude won in college football. That's all you can ask for. That's all you want.
Yeah, being a winner is hard, especially for Texas. I mean, I say it all the time, but they're just getting out of being in the dumps of college football for a decade plus.
Yeah.
A guy to come in and lose 3 games in 2 years. I don't have many complaints overall about it. I'll criticize here and there for sure. But you even look at it, he's been playing a lot better since he's truly recovered from that injury. You look at those intermediate area throws, those 10 to 19 yards in 2024. Just 4 weeks ago, he had a 68.3 NFL passer rating in those intermediate passes. He is now at 97.8 for the season.
Yeah.
So he's had just about a 30-point increase in 4 weeks in that key 10 to 19 yard range for him and for this Texas offense.
Something something you and I talked about during that Georgia Vanderbilt kind of slump couple of weeks, even really Oklahoma, but that Oklahoma game got so comfortable that it was like, okay, we can kind of overlook it.
He was clearly still hurt against Oklahoma.
Yeah. And then Georgia happened. It was like, okay, this is an issue. Vanderbilt happened. Like, okay, this is a continual problem. What's going to happen? Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, A&M, the dude has absolutely looked like the old Quinn Ewers again. And I really don't have very many questions aside from his health in terms of his ability to throw the football.
No, or his toughness. I think
Can we talk about his
questions of that? But with how he played in that A&M game,
thank you.
You can talk about those 2 plays. You can't deny the heart and the toughness that he showed in that game. With that 10-yard run to start things out.
Well, that run that he had on the sideline that felt like it could have gone for 30 or it lasted 30 seconds. I don't know how slow of a run it was.
McCoy, baby.
It was there's something about that field that just makes our players look way slower. Our quarterbacks look way slower than they are. Well, maybe they're just, I don't know. But anyway, that was a huge play. It was an absolute huge play. And it kind of set something off in Quinn of saying, maybe I can run around a little bit, because in the pocket, he was moving. He kind of had that Tom Brady pocket presence of avoiding pressure and getting into open space, extending the play, maybe not scrambling and running with it, but definitely extending the play with his legs.
How about that play to Gunnar Helm where he knew? I mean, I was very impressed by, because he's a player sometimes
on the Helm
feel like
hurdle,
he doesn't know where he's at in the pocket. He's scrambling out. He gets right to that line, hesitates, goes back, makes sure he's behind the line of scrimmage, and gets it to Helm. He drew the respect as a scrambler because of that earlier play, and then just stopped on a dime and threw it to Helm. That was another one of those plays that we could have mentioned yesterday, whereas like that was a momentum changing type play. Also, this isn't a to do with running, but that crossing route to Wingo, that throw was beautiful. He had some of his best throws of the season in this game. The deep ball to Golden, obviously. That crossing route to Wingo, if you look at it from like the sky cam view behind him, look when he throws that ball and where he's throwing it to. And if we get that version of Quinn and he can clean up, and again, the pick, a little unlucky, I would say. So it was still not a great decision. Probably not a pick 6 if it doesn't get tipped after watching it over again. But if you can just avoid those 1 or 2 plays in a game, and he plays like he did against A&M, other than that, the rest of the season, I think it could be ending with some special hardware at the end of this season. Maybe a couple trophies if you count the conference title as well.
Yeah. Well, Jake, going into Georgia last year compared to going into Georgia or earlier in the season compared to going into Georgia this week, you were getting a coming off of injury, Red River rivalry where Quinn didn't play his best game, but we overlooked it because of how the offense played as a whole and handed OU a very, it was a comfortable win for Texas. You go into Georgia, you're thinking, all right, cool. He's got another week to heal up. He's good to go. And then he looked extremely hobbled. He looked unsure. He looked, indecisive during Georgia. And then it looked better for Vanderbilt, but he also kind of had just a weird second half where things weren't comfortable. And it was like, man, we really need this bye week. You look at that Quinn compared to the Quinn you have now. I think I'll take this Quinn 10 times out of 10. And I feel much more confident with this Quinn going into the SEC championship game against Georgia than the Quinn you took from Oklahoma going into the Georgia game in the middle of the season.
You take out those two plays and you had Michigan Quinn again. It was that level of play without a doubt.
Almost better. In my opinion, it was the best game that he had played all season in my own personal opinion.
If you just take out those two stinking plays, man, it's frustrating because I think that abdominal, that is probably a much harder injury than the ankle, especially with you can go see it on Twitter, the special orthopedic brace they have that's like brand new. It's like the newest technology for these ankle injuries, and that's what he was wearing, where it keeps your mobility. And clearly that brace was helping because he was able to make plays with his feet. I don't think this injury, I think that abdominal injury really, or oblique or whatever, was really bothering him for quite a while, and probably hurt his confidence and his ability to throw it because he probably wasn't very comfortable when he was throwing it. And so I feel like a lot of that is just health.
Yeah, and then you got Trayvon Walker coming at you 90 miles an hour, and you're like, yeah, I don't want to re-hurt my abs again. So
the offensive line did him no favors in that game.
Well, and he didn't do himself a lot of favors. We talked about it in terms of, a lot of the sacks were on Quinn. But Jake, let's go ahead. Biggest surprises of the year, Jake. Who kind of stood out to you? Were there anything that it wasn't expected that happened? It could be good or bad, but just surprises on the season.
Yeah, I'm going to take two just right off the bat. Leona Lafau, who is someone that I thought would play sparingly and show flashes this year, and then next year would be what he is this year. Now next year, expectations are going to be even higher for him because he's been a very good football player and has basically taken David Binda's spot. Yeah. And I don't think that's because Binda's not good. I think it's just because Leona Fau is really effective, being able to play against mobile quarterbacks, being able to drop back into coverage, still being able to blitz. Binda is probably still a better blitzer, but just being kind of a comfort player for the coaches to throw out there. And then the other one is Hayden Connor, and I got to take some accountability here because I've been trying to get rid of this man's job for like 2 or 3 years now, where it's like Neto's going to start over him. I think that was one of my preseason predictions. I'm an idiot. This is the one position that I claim I can evaluate pretty well, and I still think I can, but Hayden Connor's flipped it into a different gear. He was dominant against A&M, and he's been dominant the whole season, really. He's helped his draft stock. He's going to get drafted higher than he would have at the start of the year. And he's been one of the best offensive linemen. Him and Kelvin Banks have just been absolute anchors on the left side of this line. And even against Georgia, Hayden Connor is probably the best performing lineman by far out of the whole group. And he has always been a good pass blocker, but his run blocking, he has become nasty this year. Before, I always complained because he couldn't maul people and open up holes. That is not the case. He's pulling, he's mauling someone. He's down blocking, he is taking someone to the ground. He has probably had more pancake blocks in this season than the last couple combined. And it's been really fun to watch a guy that you thought had reached his ceiling. I can't remember. I think it's the other guys just break through that ceiling. I'm just doing random movie quotes now, but to just reach a level I didn't know was there for him.
Yeah. And Jake, can I take the whole defense?
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Can I take the whole defense? I mean, I don't know if I think people thought that the defense would probably improve from last year. I don't know if anybody thought that the defense was going to be this year. No. I mean, Jake, this is the best defense in terms of points allowed for the University of Texas since 1983. So you can basically say this is the best defense that the Texas college football program has ever had, because 1983 offenses were played slightly differently than they are in today's college football world. They allowed 8.7 points per game in 1983. They're at 11.7 points per game, more so than the 2003 defense. And any recent history that you and I have seen, this is the best defense that we've ever seen. And it's a testament to Coach PK. It's a testament to Coach Kenny Baker. It's a testament to the secondary coaches. It's a testament to the position, like recruiting, player development, strength and conditioning coaches, all of it. It's a testament to what this program under Steve Sarkisian has really made a name for themselves as for their own identity and player development. And they really turn the whole tide of when you can start winning games that are not within the realm of the identity of the head coach. Steve Sarkisian's teams have always been known as, you better outscore him because he's going to outscore you. If you can't score more than 40 points on Steve Sarkisian, you're going to lose the game. Texas is winning games with 17 points on the board. Texas is winning games with 20 points on the board. Texas is winning games with 27 points on the board, Jake. By 2 possessions. So
yeah.
that's defense, man. And from the players and the coaches, I think the biggest surprise to me was this defense. And I can't stop thinking about guys like Michael Taft and Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill and Jahdae Barron, guys like that have really – I know Colin Simmons is a true freshman, but guys like that have really made an impact immediately and have grown into the player that they are today. I just named a true freshman and a fifth-year senior in terms of the impact that they've made between Jahdae Barron and Colin Simmons.
Trey Moore and Makuba, 2 guys out of the portal.
Transfers.
Trey Moore especially, down the stretch of the season has come alive. He may – I was thinking he was going to be back. He may not be back after what he's done in the latter half of the season. And how about this? You would considering going into season, people considered there to be 3 rivalry games on Texas' schedule. 2 on the road, 1 on a neutral field, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and A&M. Those 3 teams combined for 1 offensive touchdown. Arkansas and A&M were 2 of the top-ranked offenses in the SEC. Obviously, Oklahoma, they're Oklahoma this year. But 2 of those offenses are really good, and they were both on the road, combined for 1 touchdown in those 3 games. That's incredible, especially in today's college football.
Right, and all with mobile quarterbacks and keeping the rushing yardage down to a minimum. You know, I think that's just it's a testament to this team's preparation on a week in and week out basis of getting ready for their opponent and staying focused and staying consistent throughout the college football season. That's the biggest thing you have to worry about, is your team staying focused and being prepared to play their opponent that's in front of them that week, because we saw more this season than we have in previous seasons recently. It's a week by week league. You know, you could be, beating Ohio's, you could be, beating a top ranked team in the country. You could be beating Georgia one week and then losing to Vanderbilt the next week. I was trying to think of a quick turnaround for a team, and beating Georgia, then losing to Vanderbilt the next week for Alabama. That's just what this season has been, and it's not just Alabama. It's for a lot of teams. You could throw an Ole Miss in there. But I think you see some things in terms of player development in the offseason and on a year-to-year basis, but it's the team you start off with week 1 compared to the team you end off with in week 14. And the differences between the two and the progression, you can go one of 2 ways, Jake. You can start off here and you can kind of gradually make your way to becoming a better team, or you can start off here and you have a bad loss and the rest of your season kind of tails off. Or you can start off here and you just gradually decline. Texas was thankfully the first option of where they started here. They were already really good. So maybe here, and they have gotten better as the season has gone on. I think Texas has only progressed throughout the entire season. Now, they had a little bit of a hiccup, but I would argue that they are a better football team now than they were against Oklahoma and in Georgia.
Yeah, a better football team, but on the defensive point, it's just been from week 1 belt to ass.
Absolutely.
Every week.
Absolutely.
They have given up more than 300 yards once this season. That was to Florida. Those were all in the second half.
Yeah, it was all second half
of a game that was 42-0 before they called off the Dogs. That was their worst statistical game, was against Florida. They have shut down every other offense this entire season. And they did play a handful of good offenses, believe it or not. So I don't think I thought this defense would struggle at the start of the year and then get better as the year went along. Turns out they just were going to start way better than I thought they would be and just do that the whole season.
Jake, another couple big surprises, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Gunnar Helm and Trey Wisner.
Gunnar Helm, especially. If you would have told me he was going to be the leading receiver at the start of the year, I would have said, this season might not go well. Quite frankly, I'm just being honest.
With the receivers that we have, I would have just said we have had 4 wide receivers go down with season-ending injuries.
But the answer was the receivers, each one has their own breakout games, and they just kind of have to share the ball. And then Gunnar Helm has just been that consistent safety net. Also, athletically, he's a different player than he was a year ago. I mean, he's hurdling people. He loves hurdling people. He's the only
tight end I know that loves leaving the ground as much as he does.
Oh, if he sees you going low, he's leaping one way or another. Even if he knows he's not going to get further, he's like, it's going to look cool.
Yeah, and the Helm hurdle. It does. The Helm hurdle. Every time he looks cool doing it. I got to give him credit.
But he's just been, his draft stock. You're seeing guys that start the year not getting talked about with the draft, and you see their stock rise throughout the year. That's a pretty damn good sign of development.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Throw Jahdae Barron in there.
Jahdae Barron. Look at Hayden Connor. Probably wasn't going to be drafted going into this year. He's going to be drafted somewhere now. Cam Williams. He was a mid to late round guy, if at all, on people's boards. Now he's being talked about as a first round pick. Yeah. The development from every single position group is just special to see from a draft grade perspective, but also just not just a scouts looking at him going, oh, these guys are physically gifted. No, it's not that. It's these guys are producing and they're physically gifted. And that's just something this program hasn't seen until these last couple of years.
You're exactly right. And anyway, Jake, I kind of wanted just to do that as a year in review, our final thoughts, a bow on the season. It was a fun regular season, man. I can't believe we're in conference championship week. And after this week, it's college football playoffs. And from then on, it could be a 1-week season. You could have another game. Who knows? But we've only got a finite amount of time to watch college football left. And I'm already getting a little upset, a little choked up about it, maybe a little bit of a lump in the throat, but it's been a hell of a season. And man, for us to be in year 1 of doing this podcast and to have the season that Texas had during this podcast, man, we couldn't have written a better script. Script writers did us good on that one. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I quite literally could not have wrote a better script other than beating Georgia, I guess. But for the last game to have the stakes it did and them to win it, that's about as good as you can write it. We'll see how this script ends. But just if you're a fan, just try to bask in it for this week. You have an SEC title game, stress about it on Friday and Saturday. I'm trying to not stress about it until then, because quite frankly, they're in the playoff, and regardless of what happens against Georgia, they can go on a heater and win a national title. When that SEC championship game ends, win or lose, ironically, my stress is probably going to be higher after that, because after that game, it is win or go home mode. And, losing in the first round would feel really disappointing after a season like this.
It would also feel really nice to watch a round of college football playoff games and Texas not be playing in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I say this now, by Thursday, by tomorrow, my stress level is going to start rising. It's just got to. But as of right now, I'm just trying to enjoy it and soak in the 11-1 season. And soak in that the win against, beating all your rivals and not giving up any touchdowns basically to them is pretty special stuff we might not see very often.
All right, Jake. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. Tomorrow's episode, we are going to have a much deeper dive into our kind of predictions of championship weekend and our final college football playoff predictions. A lot of them are already pretty much set. We're just going to be determining conference championship winners and the seeding in which we will see those conference championship winners in the at-large bids. We'll also have a couple of discussions nationwide as well. And then Friday's episode, it's going to be the episode we've all been waiting for. It's going to be Texas, Georgia, maybe longer than 30 minutes, but it'll be Texas, Georgia, primarily breaking down this matchup and a rematch after Texas's lone loss on the season, trying to redeem that in the SEC championship game, making it to the SEC championship in year one of the SEC. I love just reminding people that because I know it irks them so much. It gets under their skin. So with all that being said, we release these episodes Tuesday through Friday at noon. And then on Saturday, immediately following the Texas Longhorn game, we will give you our immediate reaction. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And please like, share, subscribe wherever you might be watching us on YouTube or listening to us where all podcasts can be heard. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.